Yes.
What do you think in terms of, like, let's say, body hardening? We touched on it then. Like, what can you do to replace what we've lost as men? So, it's somewhat good that we're not. Obviously, it's great we're not going to war as much anymore. It's somewhat good that we're not living the way that we used to. The modern world is nice for men to live in, and so it should be. But like we said, we are losing certain aspects that perhaps you would see, let's say, in the military. So how can we replace that? Is it fitness? Is that where you kind of come in into that, like, body hardening? I've seen you doing a ton of fitness challenges. I think they're brilliant. We'll get onto them later. But do you think that's the way to do it, to kind of like push yourself? And how would you do that?
Yeah, I think it goes beyond fitness, and this is, very much going into the area that I'm really passionate about here, because fitness only takes care of so much, and fitness can still be very comfortable. And this is a big problem that I see with people a lot of the time when they come to me and say that they've been following a program, but they're not seeing the results. And, they'll show me a program and I think, yeah, well, they're ticking most of the boxes here, the movements are looking good. And then what kind of comes to fruition is that it's the intensity of effort that's lacking, and again, this is a problem with HIIT training. HIIT training has been sort of marketed as like the panacea for time efficient training, but most people don't realize that they're not actually doing it to the intensity that you need to get that epoch effect where you're burning all the calories for however many hours afterwards. And so fitness can be very comfortable. Fitness, keeping fit, is not the same as pushing yourself to your limit and resetting the boundaries of what you perceive to be possible. And I think the first thing that's required to get there is to understand that there are massive benefits of doing that cannot be found anywhere else. And again, going back to the first question, massive benefit of being in the Marines, like having to be pushed to that limit on a regular basis, taken out of your comfort zone. I really think it's a very difficult thing to try to describe to somebody how beneficial that is mentally without them doing it. So yeah, I think in answer to your question, there are definitely things that people can be doing, and it's probably the hardest thing to self-motivate to do, and that is to take yourself out of your comfort zone on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be something absolutely brutal. It doesn't have to be something as intense as signing up to an Ironman next week, or to go and do a marathon if you're still getting used to running your first 5K. But it can be just little things, just taking yourself out of your comfort zone. If you somebody who suffers from social anxiety, I've dealt with this kind of stuff with clients of mine before, and I've got them to just make a habit of going to a new place each week on their own, maybe a cafe, try somewhere new, and we'll always do sort of, every week that I have with clients, we'll have little micro aims, and I've set people homework, like strike up a conversation with the person behind the counter next time you go to a cafe. So it's not even necessarily fitness based. Other things can be, obviously fitness. Obviously pushing yourself harder than you've gone before. That's a very obvious one. Others can be less obvious. I think daily disciplines for me is a big one. I like to do things daily that make me uncomfortable. Like my sort of go-to one at the moment is cold showers.
Yeah, I hate them.
Yeah, everyone hates them. I hate them. But there's something about it, mate. There's something about, self-motivating to get into a fucking freezing cold shower first thing in the morning, spending 3 or 4 minutes in there, and then getting out and knowing that most people won't do that, but that you did it all of your own, and that's your hard thing for the day done. And now, you're wide awake, neurotransmitters are firing, body's warming up, blood's flowing, all that good stuff. So yeah, that long answer, I'll always give you a long answer, but
there's more information to come back off. What sort of benefits are you getting from the cold showers? Are you feeling that they're legit or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think physiologically speaking, they're not as beneficial as full submersion in cold.
Yeah.
I think for me, like the mental aspects is the most beneficial side of it. Just the fact that it's miserable and no one wants to do it, and just getting in and getting it done anyway. But yeah, from a physiological point of view, I do think that there's some benefit. Cold therapy in general is a bit of a funny one, because if you actually try to find a decent body of credible science that backs up the benefits of cold treatment, it's actually not that easy to find. And it's just one. Yeah, no one wants to justify it. Yeah, maybe we can still convince ourselves that it's not useful. Yeah. We'll come up with an idea. But yeah, like in all seriousness, it's one of those things that it's been tried and tested so much by so many populations that we just know. Yeah, it works. It reduces inflammation, it increases blood flow. So yeah, I mean, I think physiologically speaking, it increases blood flow, which is always good. And it's good as a stressor. Yeah, we can potentially go into a bit more detail about this. People always talk about stress as if it's always negative, which isn't true. You've got two types of stress: distress, eustress. Eustress is good stress. And sometimes stressors have this beneficial effect. And I think as a stressor, it can be quite good for, again, sort of stimulating the right kinds of neurotransmitters, chemicals in the brain, getting the norepinephrine going first thing, which, wakes the body up, gets you alert. So yeah, for me, mindset, mentally, I think the benefits are more aligned to that, but there's some physiological benefit there as well, I think.
How do you think you build that mindset? Because all of us know that the mind is like the start of everything that you do, whatever it is. Do you think that stems from fitness? Do you think fitness is the best way to achieve that? Because me and Steve, who comes on the podcast quite a lot, he's a personal trainer. We always talk about how all areas are important. You need to be like a Renaissance type of man. But at the core of that is fitness, because it kind of gives you that energy. It gives you that. It's very easy to go to the gym for an hour and feel better, like you've improved very quickly. But it's very hard to do that in other areas of life. But it kind of gives you that kickstart for the rest of the day. I think if you went to the gym on a Monday morning at 5 a.m. till 6 a.m., you're more likely to go on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Whereas if you skip the Monday, I guarantee you're going to skip another 2 or 3 days. And what do you think in terms of, let's say, the catalyst for everything else? Do you think it is fitness, or do you think it stems somewhere else?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I always try to encourage clients to adopt a few keystone habits first and foremost. So keystone habit being any habit that acts as a catalyst for more positive behavior. And I think absolutely fitness is probably the most obvious keystone habit. People who generally have that structure based around movement tend to find that'll have some positive impact on the whole rest of their lives. And again, I mean, I think what's not getting talked about enough in health in general is the relationship between movement and the brain. Essentially, health comes very much down to, but in very large part to chemical balance, chemical regulation in the brain. No one who's unhappy is healthy. So, I agree with that. So yeah, I'm kind of digressing slightly from the question, but the answer to the question really for me is practice. That might sound sort of frighteningly obvious and simple, but I get people saying to me all the time things like, I just don't have any discipline. And, discipline isn't something that you have or don't have. It's by definition, it's practice. And people say, I don't have motivation. Or motivation, discipline is part of motivation. And motivation very much goes hand in hand with energy. And action breeds energy. Inactivity breeds lethargy, breeds laziness, down regulates metabolic functions in the body. The less we do, the less we feel like we want to do. I mean, this is one of the reasons why high performers, high achievers, these alpha male guys and women, super professional, super busy women, entrepreneurs, they tend to have more energy than the population that's doing a lot less, because they're always on high alert. They're always moving, they're always looking for the next thing to do. And I think that's the worst the worst kind of cycle that people can fall into is not including that keystone habit of movement, then developing that lethargy off the back of that inactivity, finding that they've got no energy, which then translates into no motivation, saying they don't have discipline when actually discipline is just the thing they're not doing. And then we get into that cycle. So absolutely agree with you. Like, fitness is probably the most obvious keystone habit that seems to have a positive impact on everything else.